In the beginning, there was the Hardtail, a cult cross-country classic. But as suspension tech has evolved and courses have evolved and racing has evolved, is there still a place for the cross-country Hardtail? Well, Orbea thinks so, and I'm going to explain why I think they're right. This is the Orbea Alma, but before we get stuck into all the new details on this new bike, let's just work out where hardtails have come from. Hardtails have got a long history in mountain biking, and with good reason too. Ever since those pioneers were riding around the hills of Marin County around Mount Tamalpais on those single-speed clunkers, which then morphed into multi-speed mountain bikes, hardtails have been at the core of mountain biking. Materials have changed from those early simple steel steeds to being complex and carbon fibre, but with that change of material, weights have amazingly dropped from the high 50s down to the low 20s. That's in pounds, so the weights have really dropped off. The Alma has got a long history as well. It first came out in 2006, and whilst it was launched as a 26er and a 29er, it was the 26er that won most of the titles, and it was a real winner. It won a lot. It won, well, national titles, it won World Cups, it won World Championships, and it even won Olympic medals with Julian Absalon and Catherine Pendrell, XC legends. And the winning continues because only just last year, David Campos won the European cross-country short-track title, actually on a rigid forked Alma, but still, the Alma is still a winner. Orbea, like lots of brands, have got a range of hardtails for different requirements, different terrains, different riders. The Alma has always been the thoroughbred, though, uncompromising in its XC demands for lightness, stiffness and speed. Whilst the Alma has always been the XC bike, Orbea does offer other hardtails. There's the Laufey, their hardcore hardtail, big forked, low slung, slack, and it's designed to winch and plummet, ready for burly terrain. There's the Honor as well, which offers huge versatility in an entry-level package, great for that first off-road machine. This is the all-new Alma. This is Orbea's latest XC machine. A super-light carbon frame, just over a kilo for a medium-sized frame. Modern geometry with a 67-degree head angle, 75.5 seat angle. The reach for a medium is 435. Tyre clearance for big 2.4-inch XC tyres. Dropper post friendly with a service window and a 31.6 diameter seat tube. The top-tier models come with a super-light integrated bar stem one-piece unit, which weighs just 265 grams, despite being a full width at 760mm. Ultra-innovative frame design, but much more on that later. As you'd expect on a cross-country or cross-country marathon race bike, it's equipped with 29er wheels, and the fork is actually now 110mm of travel. And yes, it does have a remote lockout because, well, racers need those. Coming in 4 different frame sizes with 5 different spec models, and there's the option of Orbea's Mayo, where you get to choose the spec and paint options that you want. A mountain bike hardtail, especially an XC speedster such as this, is a pure mountain bike experience with just enough of the things that you need. Nothing more, nothing less. It's lighter and more direct than any full suspension. That feeling of the direct connection from your legs to the rear wheels hooking up on the ground, unfiltered by kinematic constraints, it's unparalleled. That efficient feeling on the right trail is amazing. Yes, rougher trails, suspension can aid grip, but on the right trail, the power transfer of a rigid rear triangle, it's unmatched. With none of the complexity of a rear suspension system, there's no rear shock, there's no additional pivots, there's no extra bearings or bushings. They're as light as you can get, with a side bonus that maintenance is as minimal as it can get too. It's a very pure riding experience. Traditionally, hardtails have delivered out of the saddle stiffness and pedalling performance, but at the cost of harshness when you're sat in the saddle. Is there another way to develop a new hardtail if the engineers were untethered by conventional thinking? Let's find out. Traditionally, engineering a hardtail frame has been a game of connecting the dots. What do I mean? Well, we're connecting loading points. So we're connecting the rear axle to the bottom bracket. We're connecting the bottom bracket to the head tube, and the head tube and the bars effectively to the saddle. And connecting those dots was always a bit of a compromise, where if we created something that was really stiff and really good for that power transfer, it meant that it was really stiff and uncomfortable and probably too harsh to ride. The other side of that compliance conundrum is if you make a ride that's too soft and maybe too comfortable, it's then really hard to ride. You can't push it through sinewy single track. And this was the knife edge that engineers had to balance, well, up until now. As we've mentioned, Orbea has decades of experience of building hardtails with composite materials, but materials and the understanding of how to use those materials changes. So the balancing act of comfort and stiffness, well, that knife edge can be managed differently. The frame uses a classic double diamond layout, and that's because, well, it's proven and it works really well. But as you look closer, there's lots of subtle different shapes in the carbon. And we've talked about carbon fibre quite a lot on this channel already, and how literally the different layers of fabric, as they're laid up, that layup that's often discussed, it can change how those properties work. The characteristics of stiffness in different directions can change. Also, what you can do is create wonderful forms that change the characteristics of how they move under different loads. And with carbon, well, you can do a lot. Orbea says the lower section of the frame, from the head tube to the bottom bracket to the rear axle, handles most of the torsional and lateral loads, resisting flex and passing more watts to the rear wheel. But by flattening the shape of the chainstay and seat stay, and where the seat stay meets the top tube, they're able to build in vertical compliance in just one plane. A lot of those properties and characteristics were shared on the old Alma, but this new Alma has got a very special feature. It's got an X fader. Orbea says that by changing the orientation of this lower section of the seat tube, it can separate out the loading forces, so it can help the seat tube absorb more energy-sapping vibrations and impacts in the saddle. Just enough vertical flex to smooth out the trail, but then the layup and tube forms still offer stiffness under power, without compromising the explosive acceleration and sharp handling that XC racers crave. So, more stiffness under power and more comfort in the saddle. No doubt we will be seeing this bike raced with the newly formed Orbea Fox cross-country team, with stars like Rebecca Henderson and Simon Andreasen most likely taking it to podium places. But here's what I find interesting about this bike. Whilst it's been designed for those XC elite, I still want one. I know, don't worry, I'm not going to take up XC racing and artificially age myself very quickly. No, I can see precisely where I'd use this bike, and that's on really big days out. Proper cross-country stuff where I need to pack 2 maps because I'm crossing over so much terrain, and I need something light and something fast, where previously I might have been tempted to use a gravel bike, whereas with this I've got something much more capable. I've got 110mm of suspension, I've got a much more comfortable perch in the saddle, and I can fit really big tyres. So back to that initial question, has the hardtail evolved and has technology helped it? Do we need one? Well, I think Orbea with its unique design has proved that there's still lots more innovation to happen on hardtails, and that is a good thing. Those are my thoughts on the evolution of the cross-country hardtail and how we've got to a very different place from those early steel hardtails. That's my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Of course, don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, and please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. It helps us make great content just like this.